Hello and welcome everyone to the third episode of the Analytics India Magazine podcast featuring the AIM Leaders Council members. Today we have with us the Chief Data Officer from Credit Avenue, Mathangi, and Director Data Science at Skurus Technologies, Vanitha. And we will be taking a dive into what data leaders day looks like, right? Welcome Mathangi, welcome Vanitha.
Thanks, hi, Kashyap. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Let's start the conversation, right? I think I worked as a data scientist before, and I worked with my manager directly, but I never had a view into what a data science leader's day looks like, right? And I think many of our viewers might be curious to know that. So my first question is, let's start with the basics. Is it safe to say that in a data leader's day, no 2 days are the same? And in saying that, do you think that you like to set yourself some kind of routine so that it doesn't become too haywire, and then you kind of go go about your day in some particular way?
Sure. So I'll start on this. I think you asked an interesting question on no two days. I've seen I think the fundamental reason for a leader is to set the routine, right? So even if it doesn't start as no 2 days are same and not process oriented, I think it's very important to bring the process because if you're just running haywire, your team, imagine they will be completely lost. As a leader, I think it's important to set the routine for the team and hence set routine for yourself. So just talking about myself, given my leadership roles in the last 10 years or so, it is a combination of finding out new opportunities for data and hence having those meetings. Then there's some amount of delivery, so you follow up with the team, etc., and then of course talent, right? So it's somewhere between this and then the strategic vision for the company. So it's divided into those four buckets, and hence so that's how the data spans. At least for the last few years, I'm not letting the routine ad hoc things dictate my day. Try to plan as much as in advance. So keep those slots on my calendar, and hence I know what I'm getting into on a day and not be surprised by it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah, I agree with Mathangi that there is always stuff that different things happening every day. So it's important to have some sort of structure because otherwise it's very very easy to get carried away and not really get stuff done. I like to kind of compartmentalize on my calendar, block out time for different things.
Okay.
Right. So I usually start my day early, and I use that 1 or 2 hours at least for either research or planning, and just to kind of my own time thinking of more long term stuff. Then depending on the meetings and the rest of the day, some time with the teams. So I focus on three different areas. One is the solutioning, one is innovation, and one is culture. So work with different teams. I think when you're working remote, I think it's very important also to be able to connect with the team members. So I do try and spend some time just outside of work, also just catching up with people. I do like to get involved and just understand what's happening in the project every now and then. So especially with kind of making sure that abstraction of the problem is being done properly. And then you have client meetings, or you might have some processes, and that kind of administrative work that's happening as well.
Yeah, but if you have to kind of paint a picture, right, to our audience, like your day starts, like how does it start? Like if you can say, so for instance, some people start off with meetings, or there is a morning team scrum or something like that. So if you have to paint a picture, how would you describe your day, like something like that?
My work is at this point in time expanding between many functions, right? So the way I am using some of the productivity tools to organize my day, right? So anything goes onto my list of tasks, and then there are certain buckets that I've classified that goes in. So I use Asana from my Gojek days to keep track of things, and so there are functional activities. There are activities that you make sure that the project is on track and initiatives are coming or done that, and then you're talking to the CXOs in the company or founders of different organizations, and then they give you a bunch of ideas, right? So generally ideas spark in certain meetings. So I have a strategy bucket on which on some of these things work, and then there are certain things with talent. So each of these buckets are actually try to work some of these in async mode, and then do one cadence for each of that. So for example, projects are updated async, and then I do like a bi-weekly catch up with my team, for example, to understand where the projects are going, and then I use that as a opportunity to tell the team on how this is matching up with the overall vision, where is the strategy coming in this, or if there are changes, those are the times that we discuss that, right? So it's a combination of async and sync. So my sync meetings are planned, so that those are the times I'm giving input to the team. My async is fundamentally managed with the productivity tool that I try to resolve some of this. For example, my one-on-ones are documented. There is an agenda before every one-on-one, even if I'm catching up with an IC person in the team. So there's a list of agenda that I would like to follow and I would like to ask, so I go prepared on the one-on-ones. Whatever their asks are, get documented, gets actioned on, I give them a timeline. So my tasks get filled that way. Then I action that over a period of week, I close some of the async ones. And then figure out if I have to, possibly I'm figuring out should there be sync cadences that has to be kept, or this is a one-time call, right? I would like to be at a situation where there are well-planned cadences and my calendar does not get filled with ad hoc meetings. That way, it looks more structured and I can deliver most value. So I've still not answered your question on how does one day look like. I'm saying look at it as a period of 2 weeks for me, in which a lot of these things come into picture.
Yeah. How does your day start? Do you start with meetings? Do you start with?
I don't start with meetings. I start with
Emails.
time to myself. Not emails.
Okay.
Very few emails I feel need to be replied to immediately. And if they are very urgent, they will always reach out to you through another mode of communication. So I start off with, I would have planned some work the previous day that I would, and I usually, the first thing in the morning, I try to do the long-term kind of research or innovation kind of, there's more strategic work which requires some amount of thinking before I have people kind of reaching out to me. After that, I do check my emails, I look at my calendar, I see my day. I usually, a lot of the team members, they start working a little later. So by that time, I know, I'm ready to sit and talk with them. So I do my meetings towards the middle of the day. And then I do a few hours wherein I have, might be working on presentations or other things.
Okay.
Work by myself, take a few hours off in between to spend time with my kids, and then I have meetings again in the night.
Yeah. Talking of meetings, right? And this is in every IT company, or for that matter, so many companies say that there are so many redundant meetings, and especially for leaders, you're CC'd in everything. And nowadays, it's just like this just could have been an email, right? so many.
No, so I'm a big proponent of async thing. I recently wrote a blog on async. I'm trying to drive the culture of async, in my team as well as in the overall company. I think a lot, like 90% can be done async. I believe this philosophy that a lot can be done async, which is why you need to adopt a good productivity tool for doing async. I try to restrict emails to bare minimum and try and bucket them and get certain conversations going. So as a leader, you'll have to step back, right? If you're in every conversation possible, then you're not scaling up the team.
Yeah,
so bringing up and scaling up the team, with the right level of leadership talent is very important. So that will also cut down your unnecessary CC on all the emails. So you'll have to step back. You'll have to work async. You'll have to figure out how can you give your strategic initiatives more attention than day-to-day things. Right? Day-to-day should happen as planned. There is no reason why it should not happen. So 90% goes async. Sync is 10% where you really understand the perspective and the thought process. You're using your sync time to think big. If you're using sync time to solve day-to-day problems, then there are some fundamental issues that's happening that has to be solved.
Yeah, and how do you manage it? How do you avoid meetings? How do you say no to them politely, or just like Because it's impossible. The number of meetings that you have sent invites to, all of them you can't attend. So how do you manage
a
it?
meeting needs to have an agenda and an objective, right? Without it, there's no point. So if someone set up a meeting, the first thing is, what is the purpose of this meeting? If it's, can you vote on this or this, well, you can immediately reply, right? It's like, that's my vote, okay, remove from calendar. But I am a fan of collaboration. I do believe, that you need to have conversations, but there has to be you have to kind of take a step back and really you ascertain whether it's required or not.
Hmm.
As you said, you can't really get into every single little thing, and if you're dealing with a small day-to-day, you won't have time to deal with the bigger picture, right? And which is more important. It's also good, if you have team members who can take it on. That's one thing that I like to do. Say, hey, why don't you lead this meeting, and if I'm required, just pull me in. So.
Correct. And so, talking of reducing the number of meetings, at the same time, I think it is important what happens in the meeting itself, right? So, when you set agendas, so I read this or I saw it somewhere that, for instance, Satya Nadella, he has a method where whenever someone pulls him into a meeting, he asks them 10 questions every time, right? And he wants to the point answers. And if he gets good answers, he moves them to 9 questions. And if not, he'll move them to 20 or 30 questions, something like that. So, what are the methods that you use to ensure that your time is utilized the best, and your meetings are, you stick to the agenda in your meetings, and then they achieve the goal that they're supposed to?
So I'll tell you a few best practices in this. One, meeting should have a pre-read, right? Which means it's a document already given to you. Second, you comment on the document. General practice, meaning a good practice is only the comments get addressed in the meeting. So you come to a meeting, the person has already sent you a pre-read. If you have not done your homework and commented on it, you don't get to comment on the meeting at all, right? You say these are the comments that I have, and you are only talking about disagreements, right? That's one thing. Second is, you could have, like, let's say it's a 1 hour meeting. It could warrant a 10 minutes, what is called as a silent meeting. What everyone does is open their laptop, go through the document. Maybe they didn't have time to go through it. Go through it now, and then say that, okay, I've gone through this, I've commented it, and the person who runs the meeting addresses your comment. It should have a final agreement, especially 60 minutes is a criminal time you're asking from people. So, and let's say if there are 5 people, that's 5 hours of time that you have snatched from someone from the company's initiative. So, you better figure out what are the minutes of meeting, and then a meeting without action item is useless, right? You have wasted time on that. So, it should have definite action items, it should have the next path moving forward. It should be only had if it couldn't have been resolved ASAP.
Okay, so the pre-reading and meeting should happen.
Pre-reading, commenting. It's not only I read something and I've come for another lecture of that, right?
Okay.
So it has to be, you comment on it, you have only these points of disagreements to add or disagree or something on that.
Yeah.
Then the meeting organizer only addresses that point. That means your meeting gets extremely focused. If you can wrap up a 60-minute meeting in 45 minutes, why not, right? You save 15 minutes for everyone.
Yeah.
If there are no disagreements, why we don't even need to have the meeting.
Yeah,
do you have some?
You have this concept called a working meeting, and you have a discussion sort of meeting. In a working meeting, you need a smaller group. So not everybody needs to be involved, right? And you have a small group, and you're sitting and you're trying to achieve some goals. And maybe over there you don't have a pre-read. You're trying to create something together. You don't need everyone in the team over there. The discussion meeting, you have the results. So there's a working meeting with a smaller team. Whatever the outcome of that meeting was, that's shared with the larger group. They review it, they put in their comments, whatever their points are, and then it's discussed. A 1 hour, if a meeting is scheduled for 1 hour, there has to be a really good reason for that, right? So there have to be action items coming out of it, but there has to be action items during the meeting also. Like, what is it you're trying to achieve for 1 hour? Why can't it be achieved in half an hour, 45 minutes, right? You really have to show respect for everybody's time here, right? So, kind of having those kind of guidelines really helps.
Yeah.
One thing to add there, right? So you share your screen during the meeting, then you type as people are talking, then you say if there is a point to disagree or not, and then you close it. if you had a point to get in, and it has to be closed by the end of the meeting. Right? If it is not closed, then there's some big process problem or attendees were not there, etc. So screen share, don't do minutes of meeting as an afterthought. Do minutes of meeting right in the meeting, right? Write it down, let people see what you're writing, and that's it. And you don't need after that to even send the minutes of meeting. If it's done through a good tool, right, then everyone has access to it and it is done with it. Investing in a tool, it could be A tool or B tool, is very important, for founders and CEOs of the company to spend their time in, because that tool is the mechanism in which leadership meetings happen. Because a lot of times your projects get tracked in Jira or any other tool like that, right? Like once a project kickstarts, the engineering and product can work on tools. But what normally does not happen is leadership meetings don't get tracked. Leadership decisions making process are not done async, right? So investing in a good tool and figuring out the engagement of how leadership in an organization is going to work is very important.
Correct, correct. And now moving on to, so meetings are decided and now, so but meetings are mostly with people whom you are working directly with, right? So you leaders at your position probably are not working directly with the data scientists, or probably they are not involved in every hiring of a data scientist, or an associate. Then, so how do you ensure, that? So my question is, what steps in your daily routine can ensure that your delivery maintains certain standards, there are no errors, the hiring quality is maintained. So what are those different things that you do throughout the day? Is setting up processes one, which can be more strategic and broader over the period of time, but at the same time it could be something that you do regularly. So what are some of the things that you do to ensure quality of delivery and talent?
So there are two buckets I see, right, for a data leader to operate in. One is what I'm calling as functional, another what I'm calling as delivery, right. Functional would span across from hiring, setting up processes for the entire team to function on. How does your career development have? How does your career pathing have? These are questions that your individual contributors have in the team and your managers have for their growth, etc. So the functional has to be driven, separately, and then you establish functional processes. One philosophy I've been following of late is anything that I say as a principle or whatever, one to put it out, right, rather than just say it, right. Say that these are the principles we follow, and the setting the first principle right for any process or any delivery will clear up a lot of things. Other now coming to delivery, it's a road mapping, timelining things. How do we measure, timelines? How do we, tell the stakeholders that certain things will take time and this is what it would mean, etc. How can you roadmap at least for a quarter in advance? Will give you a lot of flexibility on, planning things, and you're reducing ad hoc at that point in time, right? When it comes to hiring, it's another ball game altogether, right? Again, setting up hiring principles, setting up what kind of talent we want to nurture, figuring out the delta from what we want to achieve and where we are with respect to talent is a separate exercise. I think that should have its right processes. Make sure your panels are set in place. Make sure what should the panels ask, where are the question banks, what are you assessing, what each member in the panel is assessing differently from the others. Should you have a debrief for certain roles? What should the debriefing sessions look like about the candidates? Who takes the final call? How does exception raised? Document all of these processes. Have your leadership team have a consensus with this. Have your senior managers in the team have consensus with this, so that they understand what you're driving. Once everybody understands your first principles of what you're driving and why you're driving and the process to the team, then it is a matter of executing. Then you don't need to, if this is set right, then you are not executing, you're not coming in every meeting or every hiring call you are coming in.
Yeah. So that is setting up processes, right? So setting up processes. Is there something that you have to do on a daily basis, or at least 2 to 3 times a week, so that to ensure
hiring
that
the right talent is the key over there, because you need to be able to empower your team to be able, at the same time, they have to be able to meet the goals and have the right quality output as well, right? So you need the right talent for that. That is the first step. So apart from that, there has to be, again, I agree, I really agree with you, there has to be a plan. There has to be specific tasks and specific goals. Only then will they be able to understand, okay, I need to. And especially when you have something like, a data science problem, which is so exploratory in nature, and you tend to kind of get lost into the weeds, and there's so many algorithms, you can keep playing around with the data, there's just so much, and it's very, very hard to get them to come out of it and get them to kind of follow a timeline, right? So having someone who is able to get them out of that mode is very important, right? It comes down to your team. I do get involved in sometimes if it's especially tricky, say it's a challenging client or it's a tricky project as well, right? The problem statement is a little difficult. A lot of the junior scientists, they're really, really hands-on. They're really on top of the algorithms that are there right now. What they struggle with and what will come with experience is really that abstraction of the problem, right? Like understanding what is the business problem and then translating it into a data science problem, right? And looking for that in the data. And that is where if that happens, in a collaborative manner, you kind of have a brainstorming session and stuff, and the outcomes are kind of fixed over there, then they are able to work independently.
Yeah. And so this is in terms of delivery. Now, when it comes to client engagement, right? Obviously, it is not that. So there are some teams, so especially for in a data science provider firm, there will be some teams who will obviously engage with their respective client every day, or right. But when does a data science leader come in? When is there a need for data science leader to speak directly with the decision maker or the client in your client's company, right? So, and how frequently do you decide? How do you decide when is the need, and what happens in those meetings usually?
Well, that's an interesting question. So there are two ways to do it. So again, kind of going to the point that I spoke about earlier. And in the initial part of the project where they are defining their problem, because usually most of the time, especially if these are business stakeholders, they'll be talking about their problems, right, in a non-technical way. So kind of being able to understand that and what solution would drive the maximum value in order to solve that problem is something that possibly I would step in for with the team lead as well, right? At that point, the second part where I would be involved is, say, usually if there is in their team someone who's at the same level, because the conversation would then be very different, right? So if it's going to be more of a technical, then possibly the guys in the team can handle it. But if there's going to be a leader from their end who's part of the conversation, then definitely I would need to be involved, right? And then the third thing is, like, if say we are traveling and we are in the air, in the vicinity of, and then we definitely drop in and try, especially because a lot of clients are, say, across the globe, right? So you wouldn't get to meet them face to face very often. So that's one area where we would.
Yeah, it must be slightly different for you, right?
So there are organizations that operate like pods, right? Now, for example, there are pods, different pods, and in each data scientist works, or data scientist or analyst or data engineer, etc., works in a pod like manner with product. Let's say, and if you have heard about the concept of single-threaded leaders, right? Single-threaded leaders run that unit of that business, or run that unit of product, etc. They can be from product, they can be from business, they can be from data, etc. So pods align to that single-threaded leader. So in which case there is day-to-day activity happening within the pod, which a leader need not have visibility to can have visibility but still may not get into direct operations, etc. In such cases, it could act like a client. So if that is the mode my team is operating in, then I get into a lot of one-on-ones and cadences with the single-threaded leaders. So I set up cadences with the team separately, and then with the single-threaded leaders, a one-on-one kind of thing. Wherever there is a conflict or things that is not well agreed, then I get into it. Otherwise, I ran with strategic direction with the team. and then figure out what is missing or where the gaps are or how we can go about it with the skill-related leaders.
Okay. And one final question. So nowadays leaders believe that they should be hands-on as well. When was the last time you guys coded, and how often do you do that? Is there a need for leaders to code, and then why?
I coded on Sunday. Yeah, this is the last time I coded. But no, to answer your question, the way the industry is right now, it's very easy to get outdated with the algorithms or the tools that are there, right? But in order to be up to date, do I need to be coding? If I'm doing that, if I'm going to be down to that level, then I'm not going to be able to look at the big picture, work on the strategic initiatives, right, or drive the organization forward. So I need to be able to achieve a balance to that. What hasn't changed is the data, right? So my strength is in understanding the data, is in breaking that business problem down into a problem statement and understanding how the data is interpreting it. And when the final output comes, putting it back into a form wherein the business can consume it, right? And that comes with experience, right? So do I need to code every day? No. But do I need to be aware of the tools and the skills? Yes. So I try and do it just on my time off, more just to kind of just to stay aware of what is happening.
Okay, but it's not to work for the clients or this thing. It's just to stay up to date with the latest technology. It's a part of your research and upskilling and this thing.
My trees workshop happened this Sunday on how do you do trees in ensemble and decision tree trees in Excel. Okay, so I am fairly fairly I put my outside office hours, so to say, to spend time in coding and learning everything. On the job, it is tough to get to codes, but I review codes whenever it is required in project meetings. I go through it, figure out, ask some questions. But those are limited. However, I expect at least leaders in my team, including myself, to be aware of the libraries, to be aware of what is happening, etc. So that the team respects you, right? Otherwise, how is the team going to see any value in what you're saying?
Okay.
It's important.
Yeah. Okay, so I think with that we come to the end. I think we have had a great insight into the day of a data science leader. I hope this intrigues our leaders, inspires them to be and reach where you guys are. Thank you so much, Vanitha. Thank you so much, Mathangi.
Thank you.
Thanks. This has been fun.
This has been a really great conversation, especially about meetings, async work culture, etc. is something that I debate in my head almost every hour of the day. So thanks for bringing that up.